Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, the 11th of July, 2018, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. Your host today, Mike Robinson, and myself, Brian Gerrish. Big day, of course, Mike.
Is it?
A semi-final, I think. England, Croatia.
Oh.
That's an important event.
If you say so.
For the Englishmen amongst us.
Yes, I'll be supporting Croatia, I'm afraid.
Okay, we'll speak about that after the news.
Yes, okay. Well, all hell is breaking loose today, Brian. The NATO summit is beginning, and Donald Trump flew into Brussels last night. I've chosen Time, but I could have gone to a whole host of mainstream media outlets, extremely worried about Donald Trump heading to the NATO summit. So this was Time. Europe worries as Trump heads to NATO summit. President Donald Trump is the wild card heading to this week's NATO summit as allies worry about the priorities for the meeting, leadership style, and upcoming sit-down with Vladimir Putin on the heels of a rocky G7 summit with some of the same countries last month. While there's much in the agenda for the meeting in Brussels, Trump has largely been focusing on one issue: getting all North Atlantic Treaty Organization allies to meet a pledge of 2% spending on defence. In a call with reporters on Thursday, US Ambassador to NATO Kate Bailey Hutchison said the defence spending pledge would be the president's top priority in Belgium. And indeed it already has been, because this morning he was having breakfast with Jens Stoltenberg. So let's just see how that went. And by the way, as you watch this, can I suggest that you pay particular attention to Jens Stoltenberg, who's sitting on the left?
It's very sad when Germany makes a massive oil and gas deal with Russia, where you're supposed to be guarding against Russia, and Germany goes out and pays billions and billions of dollars a year to Russia. So we're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting all of these countries, and then numerous of the countries go out and make a pipeline deal with Russia, where they're paying billions of dollars into the coffers of Russia. So we're supposed to protect you against Russia, but they're paying billions of dollars to Russia, and I think that's very inappropriate. And the former chancellor of Germany is the head of the pipeline company that's supplying the gas. Ultimately, Germany will have almost 70% of their country controlled by Russia with natural gas. So you tell me, is that appropriate? I mean, I've been complaining about this from the time I got in. It should have never been allowed to have happened. But Germany is totally controlled by Russia, because they were getting from 60 to 70% of their energy from Russia and a new pipeline. And you tell me if that's appropriate, because I think it's not. And I think it's a very bad thing for NATO, and I don't think it should have happened. And I think we have to talk to Germany about it. On top of that, Germany is just paying a little bit over 1%, whereas the United States, in actual numbers, is paying 4.2% of a much larger GDP. So I think that's inappropriate also. You know, we're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting everybody, and yet we're paying a lot of money to protect. Now, this has been going on for decades. This has been brought up by other presidents, but other presidents never did anything about it, because I don't think they understood it, or they just didn't want to get involved. But I have to bring it up because I think it's very unfair to our country, it's very unfair to our taxpayer. And I think that these countries have to step it up, not over a 10-year period, they have to step it up immediately. Germany is a rich country. They talk about they're going to increase it a tiny bit by 2030. Well, they could increase it immediately tomorrow and have no problem. I don't think it's fair to the United States. So we're going to have to do something, because we're not going to put up with it. We can't put up with it, and it's inappropriate.
So,
Stoltenberg, to me, looked like small boy in the headmaster's office receiving a blast for whatever he's done. But you can see why they're so frightened of Trump, because what he's actually saying is common sense at the moment. And very interesting, isn't it, that Germany, according to him, they're dependent on gas from Russia, 60 to 70% dependent on gas. So I think there's a bit of trouble in the EU militarization camp, Mike.
Well, indeed. And Project Syndicate here really summing it up, saving NATO from Trump. This is the hysterical reaction from European leaders. Well, what can we say? In the meantime, before he arrived in Brussels, actually, Trump was asked about his relationship with Vladimir Putin. And was Vladimir Putin a friend or a foe, is what he was asked. And he chose not to answer that question. He said Putin is a competitor. But he made the point that getting along with Russia and China and others is a good thing, not a bad thing. So Trump absolutely not singing from the same hymn sheet as anybody else. Well, we'll keep people posted on this summit as it progresses, because it is clearly going to be pretty interesting.
Excuse me, going to be very interesting, Mike. Just a couple of slides to sort of reinforce things here. We've got this one where the German Navy is saying that it can't actually refuel its Navy at sea anymore because it's got problems with breakdowns on the tankers. But the other problem is they have got some tankers available, 3 Berlin-class combat support ships, but they're not available during the second half of 2018 because they're committed to or preparing for the EU's Operation Sophia migrant monitoring mission in the Aegean. So the EU belly aching that it's got to form this military system, but everything is falling apart because they've cut everything in order to get the pieces to fit the EU military unification jigsaw. So German Navy can't refuel itself at sea. Got a bit of a problem there with your warships. Meanwhile, for the Americans, they've got big problems because this article, which is actually a comprehensive article, encourage people to have a read if you're interested in this subject, and you should be. Here's the Americans with a big black hole appearing in their submarine fleet because they haven't updated. So it says the shortage is a result of a long break in US submarine production in the immediate aftermath of the Cold War. The fleet received just 5 new SSNs, the hunter killers as they're also called, between 1990 and 1999. So those submarines forming a shortage, the Navy anticipates that with current average production rates, the combined SSN and SSGN force could decline by to just 41 by 2029, a staggering 25 submarine vessel shortfall. So this is a huge problem for the Americans, Mike, and of course that represents a vast amount of money if they attempt to plug that gap. And meanwhile, Germany's on 1% of GDP for defence, and it is no wonder that Trump's now laying into them. But how wonderful to see the whole of the EU project now and EU military unification. It's literally starting to crumble. I won't say crumble completely, but the cracks are there. And we'll just remind viewers that yesterday we pointed out that the BBC, in its business section, was promoting the use of black magic and tarot cards to cast spells against President Trump. If you're new to the UK column today and you think I'm making this up, then go and have a look. Just search for the tarot revival thanks to Brexit, Trump and Dior. We also pointed out, the BBC didn't declare it, but the sociologist that they used in the article to promote tarot cards boasted that he once told God to F off. So this seems appropriate stuff for the BBC. But thank you very much to the viewer who said, well, you've missed something, UK column, because back in 2017, this was the front page of The Economist. And of course, surprise, surprise, we're back with tarot cards featuring second in, top left, Trump. So there's something of interest actually going on here, Mike.
Today is or yesterday was the first anniversary of the liberation of Mosul, and this is great news because from the brutality of Daesh and its fake caliphate, apparently lots of people were liberated, and this was an excellent example of Western backed efforts to get rid of Daesh. Unfortunately, as this little video shows, quite a lot of civilians killed. Now, the information that was being pushed out this morning was that UK forces have so far trained over 72,000 Iraqi security forces in the fight against Daesh in infantry skills, counter-IED engineering and medical expertise, but apparently not in protecting civilians at all, because, in the 10 months that the liberation took between October 2016 and July 2017, about 16,000 civilian deaths in Mosul. So that's a bit unfortunate. Of course, we don't criticise ourselves in any way, shape or form for that.
Just collateral damage.
Yes, it's only if it's Russia or Syria that's trying to clear Daesh out of their areas, or rather Syrian areas, that there's any criticism required. Yes.
Double standards.
Absolute hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Novichok 2, the sequel, because of course the good news is that Mr. Rowley, one of the victims of the latest poisoning, whatever kind of poisoning it was, has regained consciousness. He's now speaking to police. He's under protection, and we'll see what he has to say. I wonder very much whether he will appear on the streets ever again. Or whether he will disappear just as the Skripals have disappeared into the intelligence services apparatus somewhere. But in the meantime, Neil Basu, the Assistant Commissioner of Specialist Ops, has been talking about the situation. He said, at this stage, we cannot say with certainty that both the incident in March, that's the Skripal incident, and the latest incident are linked. Clearly, it is our main line of inquiry, but our investigation must be led by the evidence available and the facts. I would need a forensic link to be definitive. This is a very rare substance banned by the international community, and for there to be two separate distinct incidents in one small English county is implausible to say the least. But he said that scientists at Porton-Down at the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory had told him that really if this material was sealed up in a box, it could just sort of lie around for up to 50 years, Brian. So we've got to be extremely scared of Novichok, perhaps for the next couple of generations or so. And he said, I would love to be able to say that we've identified and caught the people responsible and how we're certain that there are no traces of nerve agent left anywhere in Wiltshire. But the brutal reality is that I cannot offer any reassurance or guarantee at this time. So there you go.
Okay, well, the slight pause is because Novichok is not all bad, and here we are. Novichok can boost trade. It is boosting trade with free parking. So let's have a look at how this is playing out. The Salisbury Journal here, free parking introduced in Amesbury after nerve agent incident. So that's a classic headline, isn't it? We've got a nerve agent incident. We've got the Chief Constable there saying he's not too sure where it is. If it's in a sealed container, could be dangerous for 15 years. 50, beg your pardon, 50 years. But we're going to solve the problem by free parking because this is going to help local businesses. The council wasn't able to help local businesses in this way before the Novichok incident, but now we've had a dose of nerve agent. We'll get those free car parks in.
Excellent.
Okay, well, where's this advice come from? Well, this is the leader of Wiltshire Council. I'm sorry, I can't stop myself laughing at the moment. This is Baroness Jane Scott. She said, it's important we continue to do everything we can to support the communities of both Amesbury and Salisbury by providing updates, information and assistance. We recognise that this is an extremely difficult situation, that it will impact on local businesses and the wider community. By implementing free parking in Amesbury, as we have in Salisbury, we hope that people will continue to visit and shop in both these centres. My question is, have they actually checked these car parks? I wasn't able to get the call in before we came live on today's UK column news, but that was the key thing. We're making all these car parks free. I take it that each and every car park has been thoroughly checked for traces of Novichok. They're not actually mentioning that, which to me would be basic due diligence for the public.
But in fairness, if you remember, you reported back at the height of the Skripal case that they apparently had found Novichok on one of the car park machines in one of the car parks. And so I suggest that the reason that they are offering free car parking is they can't be certain of the cleanliness of the car parking machines in Amesbury either.
Well, our advice is if you're going to go and park, you need your baby wipes. We carry them now in the studio here in Plymouth. Does the story stack up of what's taken place in Salisbury and Amesbury? Not according to the information that we see. So we challenge the UK government on the whole story of Novichok in Salisbury and Amesbury.
Now, last night, John Cleese was on Newsnight on the BBC explaining why he intends to leave the country, and much of his criticism was about the mainstream press. And he highlighted a report, so let's just have a quick look at this.
It's just come out, and the country that has the largest trust is the Netherlands, and then after that we've got Finland, Denmark, Sweden, Austria, and so forth. And then in the middle here, we've got Lithuania, Croatia, Turkey. And then right down the bottom, could I ask you just to read the last 2 or 3 countries? Malta.
Yeah, we get it. Okay. So you've got the United Kingdom is the lowest one. Can I just...
Lowest out of 33.
Yes, but look, you just missed out. One of the most trusted written press countries is Albania, which comes in second. So perhaps there is a correlation between the kind of press which is robust, which creates a certain level of curiosity and cynicism.
Yes. No, it's the lying and the triviality that I object to.
Yeah, so it's the lying and the triviality that he objects to. So, well, I wanted to highlight the report that he was looking at. It isn't only just out. It was out a few months ago, but this is Market Insights, Trust in Media 2018 from the Media Intelligence Service. Well, what are the points that they're making here? Well, here are the key findings. The countries at the top here, broadcast media, the countries in red, which includes the UK, France, Spain, and so on, tend not to be trusted broadcast media, whereas Finland and so on tend to be trusted. If we look at the written press, again, the UK particularly in a bad state, but online media as well. UK and France in a pretty bad state. So let's look at some of the detail on that. Trust in the media in general, and we find that the UK is absolutely last on the list, with the majority of people distrusting the media in general. Quite a large section, though, that don't have an opinion, or they've got medium trust. Trust in radio, again, the UK pretty close to the bottom, 5th or 6th from the bottom there, but better radio than television. So trust in TV pretty low. If we look at the written press, which is the one that John Cleese was showing there, we are right at the bottom once again. So the press and media absolutely distrusted in this country. But it doesn't just stick with the mainstream press, actually, because if we look at the internet in general, we find the UK second from the bottom in that case, and social media as well, where we're third from the bottom in that case. So, this distrust of what we're being told seems to be something which is much broader than just the mainstream media. There's no question, however, that doesn't let the mainstream media off the hook, as it were. The fact of the matter is that his criticism of the mainstream media, of the lies and injustices and so on, absolutely correct. The mainstream media should really be ashamed of that, rather than the BBC trying to, make fun of it.
Sorry, that lady was BBC. I didn't quite pick up on that.
Newsnight, yes.
What I noticed, of course, is that she was desperate to get hold of something. So what did she do? She grabbed Albania. Yeah. Why would she sneer at Albania? Because it's a very poor country, and therefore poor countries, the media doesn't tell the truth? Or could it be it's a poor country, but actually the media is telling people the truth? It's the sneering that got me in that little snippet there. Fits very nicely with the BBC. Why do we need the press and the media to tell the truth in this country? Well, probably Sheffield is the reason. Just have a look at this. First of all, an excellent article written here in Medium. Now, this is by a lady professor, a professor of philosophy at the University of Sheffield, Jennifer Saul. I'm going to encourage everybody to get online, find this article and read it, because she is warning about what has started to happen in Sheffield.
For our listeners, we should probably say the headline is "Papers, Please, Sheffield Council Demand Residents Carry ID."
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is an article which is really talking about the tree felling in Sheffield, or more importantly, the aftermath and what Sheffield City Council is doing. Remember, Sheffield City Council several years ago was in the UK columns spotlight as one of the most corrupt councils in the country, and at one point their whole budget was frozen due to irregularities. and a lot of effort was put into exposing them. But they're onto something different here. What's this about? Well, this lady says Sheffield City Council is willing to impose a bizarre police state simply in order to fell trees that don't need felling against the wishes of residents and all expert advice, all in service to a 25-year contract with a private company. This is not what democracy is meant to look like. And we've got absolutely no proper investigation by mainstream press and media, Mike. And my goodness, this is such an important subject. So why is this lady writing on this subject? Well, let's have a look at some of the background documentation. So we're going here to pages from Sheffield City Council website. Access to properties during tree works. It says those of you directly affected by the streets ahead tree works will receive a letter advising you of the work arrangements before we start work on your street. When undertaking our works, we will ensure that access to neighbouring properties for the owners of those properties is maintained. If our tree replacement works are taking place outside of your property, please speak to our site supervisors and we'll work with you to ensure that we can carry out our work safely while maintaining reasonable access to your premises. Residents who need access to their property via our work safety zone may be asked to provide identification in order to prevent unlawful trespass. So we, the City Council, backed up by a profit-making corporation, are going to be demanding ID from residents so that they can enter their own homes. This is very, very dangerous stuff, but it goes on. Let's have a look at the next page here. We've got hearing application for renewal modification of the injunction orders. On Monday the 2nd, 2018, an order was made by a High Court judge giving us permission to serve court papers on persons unknown. This is just remarkable stuff. On persons unknown in connection with an application we're making for renewal and modification of the injunction orders which were made in August 2017. So the City Council taking more and more powers upon itself, Mike. We don't even have to know who the individual is. You're just an unknown person, but you can still come under the ruling. And it goes on. Let's follow it through. It says, a High Court judge has ruled Sheffield City Council has been successful in seeking injunctions against those trespassing within safety barriers around tree replacement works. Following the decision, anyone trespassing inside a safety zone after the 22nd of August will be in contempt of court and face the risk of a fine and/or imprisonment. So that's good. Let's have a look at what this really means. I've given it the headline, "We will kill the trees and fine or imprison you," because there's a notice of penal notice. If you disobey this order, you'll be guilty of contempt of court and may be sent to prison or fined or your assets seized. This is a local council operating here, but of course remember that local councils steal people's children in much the same way. Entering a safety zone in order to reach private property cannot be lawful unless there are no other means of accessing that private property. In the exceptional situation where a safety zone has that effect, AME staff will facilitate bona fide access. So we've got AME now being effectively given the law.
Yes.
I pause at this point because it is no wonder that it's taken a professor of philosophy there at the university to feel so outraged. She's written that excellent article. Of course, no mention at the moment as to why all the tree felling is happening, and the plan in Sheffield is for 17,500 trees to be cut down. We are very confident now that this is in order to facilitate the 5G programme, and if you're not aware of what that is, do have a look online. So get in the way of 5G, get in the way of the trees being cut down, and you can be fined, imprisoned, or have your assets taken.
Well, the Mirror headline here is New Health Secretary Matt Hancock accepted £32,000 from boss of think tank that wants to scrap the NHS. So this is Matt Hancock. He was made the new Health Secretary yesterday. It says that he also took £5,000 from the director of a private nursing firm which supplies agency workers to the health service. So the donations will raise questions about his commitment to the NHS and could embroil him in a conflict of interest row. Well, in fact, I think it should do exactly that, because who are we talking about here? This is the head of the IEA, and well, we'll have a look at a brief excerpt from the recent NHS conference that the UK column held, and this is Lucy Reynolds. We'll explain this just afterwards, but have a listen to this.
So, I have gone through it's 18 founding members on this. Unfortunately, we can't get right to the bottom because it's come off the slide, but I have marked up their main interests that people might have heard of. Obviously, they're all involved in lots of things, and I haven't put information that's not household names. But what I have put is either key entities up here or things that people might have heard of. And I've colour-coded them. So anything that is ostensibly a right-wing think tank is blue up there, and anything that is ostensibly a left-wing think tank is red. I have organised the people so the Tory grandees, bankers and lawyers are mostly on the left-hand side, and the people on the right-hand side are people whose public image is left-aligned, including people from the Socialist Health Association. But you can see that although we've got mainly blue on the left and mainly red on the right, there is in fact a mix of these right-wing and left-wing think tanks. And the way it works is the right-wing think tanks control the agenda for the left-wing think tanks. So we really do have this charade of information and appeals being put out to the public in a colonised jargon. So it's supposed to be all about helping people and social solidarity, but actually the guys in the city put it together, and it's really fostering business.
So when we say that Matthew Hancock has accepted £32,000 from a boss of a think tank, that think tank was the IEA, the Institute for Economic Affairs. This is one of the right-wing think tanks that Lucy was talking about there. What we're actually saying here is what the point that she was making in this section was that we have these think tanks that have been established over a period of 30 years with the purpose of privatisation of the National Health Service. And we now have a man in charge of the National Health Service in this country, Brian, who has been receiving bungs from one of the main think tanks. And in fact, on that slide that Lucy was showing at the beginning of that video clip, this is the first think tank on the list. And I think it was the original think tank for promoting privatisation of the NHS. So this is more of a conflict of interest than the Mirror article implies. And I think that Matthew Hancock really has to answer this question, and perhaps he has to give the money back.
I would agree with that, Mike. And of course, what it shows us is that a game is being played out in front of the public's eyes. So left or right in politics makes no difference. The agenda is to privatise the NHS. And of course, Lucy Reynolds gave such a phenomenal overview of the history and how this was being done, and how the reality is that the NHS at the moment is literally on a knife edge. She would probably say it is privatised, but we can't actually see it yet. So doesn't it make sense that Mr. Hancock is the man who is brought in by Theresa May to actually finish the process off? Theresa May's clearly not told the public the truth over Brexit. That has been spin, lie, smokescreen after smokescreen. And of course, exactly the same with the NHS. The reality is that the Tory machinery is selling off the NHS for profit, and we've now brought in another man to follow that through. He should go.
Okay, today is the beginning of the annual conference of the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy. And of course, these people are supposed to be looking at public finances and so on. And they've got a new president who opened the conference this morning, and that is Sarah Howard, who is head of public services at Grant Thornton. She's a partner at Grant Thornton, and well, what does she say? SIPFA is a unique opportunity to inspire the next generation of public servants, rebuild trust within our society, and convene collaborative conversations to develop sustainable futures for local communities. And if that all sounds like very common purpose language, then it's hardly surprising, because she is unquestionably a common purpose graduate. Now, in celebration of her new position, Public Finance website have published an article, an interview with her, taking a public view. Sarah Hard interviewed, and she's talking all about silos in the public sector having to be broken down and this kind of stuff. It's full of common purpose language, and I strongly suggest that people read this. So it's taking a public view. Sarah Hard interviewed on Public Finance website. I was looking into her background a little bit and came across all types of quotes from her, but this one really stuck out for me, because she said that we've been thinking a lot about our role. This is Grant Thornton here, that we've been thinking a lot about our role as a business in shaping successful places. It has to go beyond corporate social responsibility to be more active and engaging. We're trying to use our networks and skills in different ways, like bringing small and medium-sized enterprises into the devolution debate. So that she is a change agent. We now have Grant Thornton acting as change agents, and now SIPFA as well. She's bringing this ideology into, and so the question is, are we going to see a larger increase in the corporate sector and the public sector not only working together, as we've been highlighting over the last number of months, but actually quite a lot of finance and money going in this direction to drive social change? And in this case, you know, what business is it of Grant Thornton to make an effort to bring small and medium-sized businesses into a debate about how this country is governed, and in talking about devolution and so on? This is acting well beyond authority, Brian.
That's the key statement, isn't it, Mike? Acting beyond authority, which of course is common purpose language. Julia Middleton, the chief executive, her book, Beyond Authority. And what was that book talking about? It was talking about using change agents, using fifth column people to get in, disruptors to break down organisations. And most sinister of all, the book is also saying that if you get in the way of this agenda, you should be steamrolled over, you should be ridiculed, you should be got rid of in order for this agenda to come through. This is the big society agenda, where the state is going to be driven down to the lowest levels of society. Many people think after David Cameron talked about big society, it simply disappeared when he disappeared. Absolutely untrue. The big society agenda is what's being driven via the Cabinet Office and the so-called Pearls Office, with links through to the banking sector, Rothschilds, and politicians. Francis Maude is one of the key ones. So this is the big society agenda, and you need people in control of money to actually get this agenda through. So why is it that we see Ernst & Young, PricewaterhouseCoopers as auditors? Why are they involved in this sort of policy? Because of course ultimately they control the big companies. If you know all the dirty little secrets about money, ultimately you control the companies. So I don't think there's any mystery as to why Pricewaterhouse, Ernst & Young, Grant Thornton are involved in this stuff, because that is how they control the bigger corporations. Right, well, if the lady can speak out about changing society, we won't expect Grant Thornton to be talking about what's happening to Melanie Shaw. Yesterday we gave an update. We had some more information in during the afternoon, so therefore after our news broadcast, and I thought I'd bring it on screen today. And I'm going to say thank you very much to this gentleman, Charles Spencer. I'll read out what he posted. I'm taking it at face value, but it seems really a really concise and measured report. He says this: having just got back home in Doncaster from attending Leeds Court for Melanie, it's already been stated on site that they will be having a hearing on the 7th of August at Leeds Combined Court, with having the psychiatrist reports done on Melanie to see if she's sound to plea, etc. The judge at this hearing was very fair and very supportive of the plight of Melanie, and quite a few times he said he's very concerned about the health of Melanie, with the constant being moved around from prison to prison and the long delays in getting the cases against her heard. I was certain at one point he was either going to bail Melanie or even stay the cases against her, which means they throw the case out of court. But he asked the CPS, when did her remand run out? And they said tomorrow, and they were going to apply tomorrow for her to be kept in prison. Another major point that was actually raised by the CPS that was that Melanie was due in court today, but the prison service did not bring her, and no one knows why. Now, I'm going to say to Mr. Spencer, thank you very much for getting that report in, taking it at face value. Just some amazing stuff there, Mike, because somebody who's due in court from a prison doesn't appear in court, they're not delivered, they're not transported to court. Surely that judge should be ordering then and there for a phone call to be made to the governor of the prison to ask where this person was. If you don't attend court normally, the court is going to come looking for you pretty quickly. But we're now so confused about the status of Melanie Shaw in prison, she doesn't even get brought into court, and it would appear from this report that the judge doesn't even pick up on it. So what is happening? We're unsure at the moment, and this report is very helpful in letting us at least bring some of the pieces together. Now, on the sideline, I'm going to say many people have been asking the so-called independent child abuse inquiry about Melanie Shaw. I've picked on an email from Robert Green, who'd been writing to the inquiry, and I'll just read out what Robert Green has been asking or saying. Dear Ms. Long, ICSA, thank you for your response, although I must tell you that I find its content less than satisfactory. I fail to understand how the inquiry could have already spoken to individuals about the notorious events that have taken place in Nottingham without interviewing Melanie Shaw, unquestionably the best known and probably the most important and valuable witness of all. The sheer barbarity inflicted by the state upon her as an accepted child victim of multiple rape should have been seen as a glaring red light in the state's efforts to silence her at all costs, and to ascertain that she is prevented by imprisonment from speaking freely to ICSA, which she has already made perfectly clear that she wishes to do. Earlier comments about issues in Nottingham being passed to the police may well be regarded as an insult to the intelligence of victims and concerned citizens when it is transparently clear that Nottingham police are an integral part of the problem. Surely you must understand that the countless crimes committed against children and vulnerable adults in the Nottingham area over many years could not possibly have occurred without some degree of police collusion at a very high level. Indeed, it has been mentioned that the overall conduct of the police and local authorities has rendered the county as little more than a gangster state, a situation that may even exist to this day. Melanie Shaw is still being imprisoned, and it's time for Baroness J to issue a public statement about Melanie if ICSA is to retain any serious degree of credibility. Failure to incorporate Melanie's testimony will be seen as a literal cover-up that is unworthy of the independent child sexual abuse inquiry. I look forward to receiving your comments on this specific issue and to receive a firm assurance from you that Baroness J has personally seen this email and my previous one. Now, I'm going to say a truly excellent email from Robert Green there. What is really needed, though, is this to be repeated by the thousands of people that now understand the plight of Melanie Shaw. It should not be left for Robert Green, who has worked so hard and done so much, to be the only person sending this type of communication. So to be a little bit hard today, I'm going to say that we are often asked by people, what can we do? And our reply is that if you want to do something to really challenge what's going on in the British state, then here you have a classic example. Get those letters into Baroness J in person, recorded delivery, to demand why a so-called national child abuse inquiry is ignoring key child abuse witnesses and survivors. 10,000, 100,000, 200,000 letters, and all of a sudden that inquiry is brought to a halt. So I'm going to say it's not up to us, it's up to our viewers and listeners today to pick up and follow the example of Robert Greene. If you have still not written to Melanie, this is also something very important because this is such a huge boost to her, then here's the address for Melanie Shaw, prison number A4126DE, HM Prison Style, Wilmslow, Cheshire, SK9 4HR. And I was reminded yesterday that you should put your name and address in the letter. It's best also to put it on the envelope. Can I guarantee that your letters will get through? Absolutely not, because it's clear that Melanie's mail is being censored. However, out of a volume of letters sent, we know that she does receive some. So we're on the same rule, 100,000 letters for Melanie Shaw. She's going to get a lot of mail. Right, well, against that background, have a look at this. This was a report from the Telegraph saying that 10,000 children in care went missing last year amidst concerns they're being exploited and abused. And what's interesting about the Telegraph report is it says that new figures from the Department for Education are disclosing for the first time that the authorities lost track of 1 in 10 children in care in 2017, with some going missing more over a month.
I think that's a typo by the Telegraph there.
Okay, just having a little bit of trouble getting the sense out of that.
Yeah.
We haven't been able to check what this information from the Department of Education is, so we're taking this report at face value at the moment. But of course, what does this article say? It fully supports John Wedger, the former Metropolitan Policeman's report, when he said he also warned the Met Police, he warned the politicians, he warned the Home Office, he warned the child protection charities, he warned local authorities that children were going missing from children's homes, being groomed with drugs for a life of sex and prostitution. And of course, what did the state do to John Wedger? They victimised him, harassed him, put him on half pay, and then attempted to claim that he was mentally unstable. To date, Theresa May, British Prime Minister, has taken no action to protect John Wedger or to act on his information. Instead, his information given to the Home Office team was lost. So we're now starting to see the real information coming to the surface. We're not talking about the abuse of 1,400 children in Rotherham. We're now starting to talk in the right numbers, 10,000 children going missing. And of course, we're seeing that the independent inquiry set up by the Conservative government does not want to talk to Melanie Shaw because she knows too much about child abuse. It gets better though, because let's just have a look here at the Rotherham Advertiser. They are getting excited because they've got an exclusive South Yorkshire Police top cops during the J report period being probed by police watchdog. The Independent Office for Police Conduct, it is independent of course, Mike, will look into whether chief superintendents, chief constables, assistant chief constables and deputy chief constables who worked for South Yorkshire Police between 1997 and 2013 failed in their statutory duty to protect children. There's some very interesting quotes in the article. Miss Senior said, "I gave my first piece of information about child sexual exploitation in Rotherham to South Yorkshire Police in 1999. By 2001-2, senior officers were aware of what was going on." Dr. Heal, a former South Yorkshire Police drugs analyst, said the reports she had presented to the force in the early 2000s were described at the time by one chief superintendent as some of the best intelligence reports he'd ever seen. But what happened? The inquiry by its major investigations team has been launched after complaints by Rotherham child abuse whistleblowers Jane Senior and Dr. Angie Heal to South Yorkshire Professional Standards Department about its top officers were ignored. So the whole thing is about South Yorkshire Police ignoring massive evidence of child abuse, and clearly there was collusion. And we're going to remind our viewers and listeners today that we are well aware that Yorkshire Police are currently refusing to act on video evidence of child abuse. This is a case which is currently going through court, so we can't give you more details, but we can be absolutely sure that South Yorkshire Police have received video and audio evidence of child abuse, which is now being swept under the carpet. So 2018, absolutely nothing has changed. We've still got cover-up of child abuse. Okay, we'll end there. Just that reminder that if you haven't written to Melanie Shaw, you're beginning to feel motivated by the horrors of what is going on around child abuse, then can we suggest that you write personally into the Child Abuse Inquiry and make sure it's recorded delivery, because as we know, the inquiry has already lost certain material. That's it for today. We will be back at the same time tomorrow. A big thank you to people who've made donations recently to UK Column. Very much appreciated. If you're not a subscriber, if you're another viewer or listener and you're not a subscriber, please consider taking out a subscription, because we can only do what we do with your help. At that point, I need a drink.
Yeah.
It's very hot in this studio today. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.